You don't have any transcriptions of their interviews?
We have the first one, and we have the dozens who've come and talked to our office.
They talked to your office privately?
They talked to Republican staff, right.
And they're not transcribed, no notes, no nothing?
The first one happened Tuesday.
No, I'm not talking about the first one.
The first one happened Tuesday, the
dozens.
next one happens tomorrow, the third one happens next Wednesday, and we'll continue to do that.
You just said dozens.
An FBI whistleblower, another FBI whistleblower, another FBI whistleblower, another FBI whistleblower, an FBI whistleblower, another FBI whistleblower, another FBI whistleblower, dozens and dozens of whistleblowers. We're doing it the way we're supposed to do it, Mr. Goldman.
No, you're supposed to turn it over to the minority.
When they come and testify, you'll have access to the transcript like everyone on the committee will.
You mean your staff is not going to turn it over to our staff? We're just in the dark?
No, when the transcript is done, you will get the transcript.
I mean of the dozens of whistleblowers you have already talked to that came to talk to your staff.
Yeah, what do you want me to turn over there?
Did you?
Their names?
Notes? Did anyone take notes? The fact of the matter is that this committee, which may go down as one of the most useless and worthless subcommittees ever created by Congress, is called the weaponization of the federal government. And the reason we all know now that this was created and stood up is that the Republicans are trying to flip the script and to distract from the fact that the true weaponization of the federal government with evidence and facts and support was done by Donald Trump and his administration and will be done by Donald Trump and any future administration. What we should be focusing on is Chairman Jordan abusing the power of his committee in the Congress to subpoena state prosecutors in an effort to undermine their prosecutions of his revered friend, Donald Trump. That is no place for Congress to be, no place for the committee to be. That is a true weaponization of the federal government. What the Republicans want to do with this committee, because we've had hearing after hearing after hearing about some bogus First Amendment violation by private companies, is they want to chill the government from actually interacting with the private companies as we come upon an election in November of 2024.
Chill the government? Oh my God, that's almost as crazy as what Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said in the arguments in front of the Supreme Court when she said to the Solicitor General from Louisiana, "Counselor, your position has the First Amendment hamstringing the government." Well, this is not about. This is not about. I know the gentleman from New York is sharper than that.
Mr. Chairman, will you just yield quickly for a brief response?
It's my 5 minutes. No, it's my 5 minutes, and when I'm done with 5 minutes.
Okay, so you're going to attack me and not let me respond?
No, I said I know you're smarter.
You said my name.
I was complimenting the new.
You said my name. You said I know you're smarter than that because I did not say anything about the First Amendment being used to chill the government. I said you in this committee are trying to chill government agencies. That's very different.
We're trying to protect the First Amendment. We're trying to protect the government from chilling American speech. Some might call this all election interference. Think about it. Mr. Bragg is charging President Trump with conspiracy to impact the 2016 election. Ms. Willis and Mr. Smith are charging President Trump with a conspiracy to interfere with the 2020 election. Seems to me the conspiracy is between Bragg, Smith, and Willis working to interfere with the 2024 race.
The Mar-a-Lago case is plagued with singular moments where prosecutors took incredibly aggressive and I would say prejudicial steps, the likes of which I had never seen in 35 years of practice on both sides of the aisle.
The Biden administration, and most notably the Department of Justice, appears to have embarked on a journey of political persecution of those with whom it disagrees, with the end result being the total social, economic, and political domination of the populace.
I've been up here for 24 years. I was a soldier when Nixon was president. I am appalled that what began with Watergate as a legitimate scandal of the wrongdoing has now become an organized weaponization by this president and his Department of Justice. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
This was a specific and obvious tactic of Donald Trump to be able to make a political defense that will never be allowed in a court of law, as Mr. Trusty and Mr. Costello know full well. And all because he wanted to co-opt this notion of election interference because he's a candidate. But let me tell you what is really election interference. Withholding military aid to an ally in the middle of a war in order to coerce and extort a foreign government to investigate a political opponent. Welcoming a foreign country to illegally interfere in our election and then using that interference for his own benefit, as Donald Trump did with Russia in 2016. Spend a year and a half on a completely bogus impeachment investigation into the president without finding a single piece of evidence of wrongdoing. And in fact, the chairman of this committee said the best evidence of President Biden's wrongdoing was a completely false accusation planted by Russia just before the 2020 election. Interesting timing. What this committee has been trying to do for the last year and a half is to chill the federal government from monitoring what is going on social media and otherwise out there so that misinformation and disinformation can run rampant in on Elon Musk's social platform and every other social platform so that the Republicans, can benefit from it in November's election.
I think the gentleman from New York just said that we're trying to chill the federal government. I don't know if it's ever been said that way. It's always the government trying to chill Americans' rights and chill Americans. I've never seen anything.
It's called projection.
I've never seen anything like the government is the one who chills American speech when they pressure big tech to censor, when they ask banks to give them. That's chilling speech, and we've seen it first. Dr. Peterson's seen it in his own country, and now it's coming here. That's what we're concerned about.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow on with my colleague from North Dakota, the notion that subpoenas are not sufficient to get information and that every ounce of evidence must be obtained by a search warrant has, of course, been repeatedly rejected by the Supreme Court over and over and over. And this hearing, the reason why, as Mr. Armstrong says, we are talking about January 6th is because, as I understand it, this hearing was initially spurred on by an FBI whistleblower who is not here testifying today. The one who ostensibly had the information about alleged wrongdoing is not here to stand in front of us, to testify under oath, to be questioned by members of both sides. Mr. Knight, I want to ask you a hypothetical. Let's say that there's a riot and an attack on our democracy on a particular day. We'll just call it January 6th for the purpose of this hypothetical. Let's say that the FBI has information that an individual was near the site of the riot that day. And let's say that the FBI had evidence that that individual purchased a firearm in the past 6 months. And let's say that the FBI had evidence that that same person planned to return 2 weeks later to interfere with another democratic process involving the President of the United States. Is it actually your testimony here today to say that it is a violation of the Fourth Amendment for the FBI to seek bank records for that individual?
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So, at least based upon the public information I have available, they did not know on an individualized basis that people were planning to return to cause violence. And I think that's a distinction that's worth noting.
That's fine. I agree with you. That's not in the hypothetical. They just knew they were going to return.
I believe you said something along the lines of evidence that they were coming back to
interfere. You're right.
interfere.
Let's just say that. Do you think the Fourth Amendment prohibits the FBI from getting bank records for that individual if they don't know that they are going to commit violence?
I think that's an easy warrant to get.
A warrant?
Yeah, I think that would be an easy warrant to get from a judge.
So you're now saying that you need to get a warrant for bank records?
I am saying you should have to get a warrant for bank records. The status quo is you do not.
You disagree with the Supreme Court, which has upheld the constitutionality of the Bank Secrecy Act.
So if you'd like to talk about the Supreme Court precedent in the Bank Secrecy Act, I think that Carpenter, which is a far more recent case, points to some very strong questions about the constitutionality of the Bank Secrecy Act. I've written something about it. I'm happy to send to your
I
office.
understand. And by the way, I agree. I mean, but Carpenter also demonstrates that the Supreme Court is evolving and is evolving on the Fourth Amendment, and there's no question, and I will tell you as a former prosecutor, if I had that predication, I would fire off a subpoena to that bank every single day, 10 out of 10 times.
Well, respectfully, sir,
Now,
it
I'm
doesn't
sorry,
seem like they even use
I have to
subpoenas
move
here.
on. I have to move on because I think it's absolutely absurd that we are sitting here trying to make an argument that somehow the Fourth Amendment is being violated when there is specific, reasonable suspicion about every individual whose bank records were obtained because they bought a gun, they were at the insurrection, and they were going to come back. The fact of the matter is, we are once again here on a completely sham rationale. There was no First Amendment or Fourth Amendment violation around January 6th. No. This is simply another effort to whitewash what happened on January 6th. One of the members of the committee calls those who were convicted of crimes hostages, while there are actual American hostages sitting in Gaza right now under captivity of a terrorist organization. And we're supposed to equate the people sitting in jail who rioted and attacked this Capitol, we're supposed to equate them with these hostages. Mr. Chairman, you continually say that it used to be that both parties agreed with the First Amendment. It didn't used to be. It is. It remains the case. We all agree with the First Amendment, but the problem is that the First Amendment is not absolute. It does not protect any single thing anyone says, and there are limits, and that's important. And what this committee has been trying to do for the last year and a half is to chill the federal government from monitoring what is going on social media and otherwise out there so that misinformation and disinformation can run rampant in on Elon Musk's social platform and every other social platform so that the Republicans, can benefit from it in November's election. That is why this committee exists.
The time of the gentleman
and we have gotten no evidence to support any of these allegations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are seeing a pattern here now, a year and a half into this Congress, and we see it with the impeachment investigation, and we are seeing it starkly here. Let's make a lot of really bold allegations and then try to weave in and mislead some evidence to justify them. It certainly happened in the impeachment, and it is happening here again, because in order to, quote, coerce or censor, then that means, A, whoever the private company that receives the communication from the government must feel coerced and act on that information, and B, they would not have done that but for the government intervention. And the problem that we continue to have with my Republican colleagues is they can get the first thing, but they never get the second. That is why evidence is important, and that's why we rely on evidence. So when colleagues over on the other side of the aisle talk about a TikTok ban, they are misrepresenting what the bill did. The bill required ByteDance to divest from TikTok, not to ban TikTok. And that is so consistent with all of the cherry picking of these emails that we have seen here today. I want to bring up another example, which was actually the focus of an entire hearing on this topic, but has not been mentioned once today. And that is the email from Clark Humphrey to Twitter related to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s tweet about blaming Hank Aaron's death on the COVID vaccine. And this was the center of the Republican case up until today, and now we're moving on. And I want to just stress why. Clark Humphrey wrote, wanted to flag the below tweet and am wondering if we can get moving on the process for having it removed ASAP. Oh my goodness, coercion. That is censorship. It's some industrial complex. But you know what the problem was? It wasn't taken down. It wasn't taken down. Twitter received that email from the White House and did not act on it. Mr. Seligman, is there possible to have coercion when someone does not do what the other person asks?
No.
Now, we've heard a lot on the other side of the aisle. I think my friend Mr. Stubbe talked so much about March 2nd, all the emails to Amazon and trying to ban books. Well, we were not allowed to enter into the record some of the testimony from the employee who received those emails at Amazon, but I'm going to go through this transcript because this employee was asked about that email. Even though you anticipated that you might be asked to remove content when you had a live conversation with Mr. Flaherty, you in fact were not asked to remove any content. Question? Answer, that's my recollection, yes. So I just want to be clear, to your knowledge, did anyone from the US government, including Mr. Flaherty or Mr. Slavitt, both of whom are witnesses here, ever coerce Amazon into removing content from its platforms? No. The answer, as the ranking member pointed out with so many other companies, was that they made their independent decisions what to do with the content based on information provided from public health experts like Mr. Slavitt and the CDC and how that applies to their own policies. So you cannot have a First Amendment violation when a private company is making its own independent decisions, as every single company as part of this investigation did. So what is this all about? It's not actually about proving a First Amendment violation. What the Republicans want to do with this committee, because we've had hearing after hearing after hearing about some bogus First Amendment violation by private companies, is they want to chill the government from actually interacting with the private companies as we come upon an election in November of 2024. Russia interfered through social media in 2016. Russia tried to interfere in 2020. And you can bet Russia is trying to interfere in our election in 2024. And the only way that these social media companies can know that is by being provided with information from the United States government and their law enforcement investigations. And if that can't happen, then Donald Trump and these Republicans benefit because Russia will help them. That is why we hear, and that is why this is bogus. And I yield back.
Time of the gentleman expired. Gentleman from North Dakota is recognized.
Election interference, huh? That's what this is all about. Ms. Weinbanks, there are 4 indictments against Donald Trump, is that right?
Correct.
And all 4 of those investigations started long before he announced his candidacy for president, isn't that right?
That is correct.
And in fact, he announced his candidacy for president 2 years before the election, just so he could bring in 3 witnesses and the entire Republican Party to say, election interference, election interference. These investigations long predated it. As usual, my Republican colleagues on the other side of the aisle are accusing the Democrats of doing all of their misconduct that they engage in over and over and over in an effort to normalize it, in an effort to deflect attention from their own wrongdoing. It is right in authoritarian 101 playbook. But let's talk about this 2-tiered system of justice. Let's talk about lawfare. Mr. Costello, your entire opening statement, as I heard it, was simply to discredit Michael Cohen. Sir, I think you're in the wrong place. Michael Cohen is currently on the witness stand at a trial in Manhattan. And if you have information about Michael Cohen's testimony, You should talk to Donald Trump and his lawyers to see if they want to call you as a witness to impeach Michael Cohen. But you know that coming down here, outside of that courtroom, while that witness is on the stand to try to impeach his credibility and his testimony, is jury tampering. You know it is unethical. You know that you are trying to discredit a current witness at a current trial who is testifying right now outside of that courtroom. You know better, and it is shameful. Mr. Trustee, you and I worked together at the Department of Justice. We had a number of interactions related to organized crime. I had no idea what your politics were. I imagine you had no idea what my politics were, because it doesn't matter. And it's very interesting to hear you now nitpick about the Speedy Trial Act and about what you claim to be unprecedented conduct in Mar-a-Lago. But I'm confident that you never came across anyone who refused a request to voluntarily return classified materials, who refused to comply with a subpoena for those classified materials, who was found to intentionally conceal and hide and obstruct justice by concealing those classified documents. You've never come across, that is unprecedented, I am certain, because that is a clear predicate for a search warrant. When someone obstructs justice, refuses to comply with the subpoena, and Mr. Issa can make up all of the facts that he wants about declaring it to be classified because he thought it or whatever it is, that will be decided in court. All of these cases will be decided in court by a jury based on the facts, evidence, and the law. And all the Republican majority is trying to do here today is lawfare, is interfere in ongoing criminal investigations that our system is perfectly well equipped to handle. And I yield back.